And welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this hands-on lecture on connecting to EC2 using Bash on Windows, we will install a Bash emulator, and that will allow us to connect to an EC2 instance from a Windows desktop without using PuTTY, in a similar way that we would if we had a native Linux environment or a other type of Unix environment such as Mac OS X. We'll also look at using the new Linux subsystem for Windows 10 to issue Bash commands from within a Linux environment on top of Windows 10. So the first options that we have available to us are to use Bash emulation on Windows 10, and that allows us to run Bash commands on our Windows 10 environment in a similar way that we would on a Linux environment. So we have a couple of options there available. We have mingw, and just go to their website there, mingw.org, or we have Cygwin. And both of those allow you to run a Linux-like environment on Windows 10. So it's basically an emulation of those Linux commands that allow you to run Bash commands on your Windows 10. The easiest way to use this is to just install one of the apps that are available that already have that built into it. So Commander is a terminal application which allows you to issue Bash commands with mingw, and so does Git for Windows. So if you've installed Git for Windows, you can just right click on a folder and you can do a Git Bash here, which will allow you to run, it'll open up a console screen which will allow you to run Linux Bash commands. Not all of them, but a good deal of them. It will allow you to connect into your EC2 instance. Now the final one that we can look at is the Linux subsystem on Windows 10. So that involves running a Linux operating system on top of our Windows 10 environment. So I'm not going to be providing any support for this because it's very cutting edge, it's very pre-release, it's no doubt going to be having issues with it, but I'm just putting it up here because it was brought to my attention by one of our students, Uga, and I think it's very good. It gives us a good glimpse into the future of how we would use Windows with Linux operating systems running on AWS. So it's pre-release currently. Be aware of that. You need to, sign up for all the disclaimers to say that, hey, this is pre-release. It may cause problems to your operating system. It's not going to be fully supported. It requires you to sign up to the Windows User Experience program. It also requires you to have a Windows 10 version that may not actually be available in Windows Update. So it may require you to download a pre-release ISO of Windows 10 and install that. So a lot of mucking around. But it's a true Linux operating system, and it allows you to do SFTP uploading of files and folders from the command line, as well as doing SSH into an EC2 instance. Okay, so I'm just in the EC2 management console. I'm just going to quickly launch an instance using the Amazon Linux AMI, and that will be a T2 micro instance. And I need to make sure that we have a public IP address assigned to this instance. We'll leave storage and tags as they are, but we need to create a new security group. So I'm just going to call it test, and I'll just leave the description as it is there. That's fine. So we need to have SSH access, obviously, to connect in and operate our instance. So we'll leave that as it is, but we also need to have access from the wider internet to come in because it is a web server that we're creating, a Node.js web server. So we need to have HTTP access on port 80, and that's for everything to come in. So now that we've got those two rules set up, we can review and launch, and then launch our instance. We'll use a key pair that we've already got. If not, we'll create one. So we'll just launch that instance. The first solution we'll look at for running Bash commands on Windows will be using an application called Commander. And that's pretty good because it's got a Bash emulator inside it. It uses mingw to do that, so it integrates between these two applications. So just go to commander.net, so cmder.net, and download the full version of that and unzip it, and we'll be ready to go. And we'll look at integrating this with Windows Explorer, and then we'll look at using it to connect using a bash command straight into our EC2 instance. Okay, so I'm now in the Windows Explorer screen. So I've navigated to where the key pair that I need to access my EC2 instance is, and that's the PEM. I don't need to convert it using PuTTyGen or anything like that. I don't need a PPK file. I can use the PEM file straight out of the box. Now I'm just going to show you very quickly how easy it is to do if you've got Git for Windows installed. So if you go to the Git website and just there's a Windows installer there, just install Git for Windows, and you can do this yourself if you want to. If you just right click on this folder, you can see that there's an option there, Git GUI and Git Bash here. So if I click on Git Bash here, it will pop up with a min-gw command line there. So you can see here we've got min-gw. So that means that I can actually now type in a Linux command, ls. So ls is a Linux command. It's not a Windows command. dir is a Windows command, but ls isn't. So if I type in ls, it'll give me a listing of what's in that directory. So out of the box, if we install Git for Windows, we can connect straight in with our EC2 instance. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect straight in using that SSH command that we get from the EC2 management console when we click on connect. And I'm just going to put that straight in and see what happens. And there I've connected straight in to my Amazon Linux AMI that I just created previously. So that's a really, really quick and easy way to do it. Just navigate to, if you've got Git for Windows installed, just navigate to where your key pair is, right click and just do Git Bash here, and you can connect straight in. So now I'm just going to show you how to do the same thing but with Commander. So it's a little bit more work involved, but I think it's worth it because Commander is a pretty good application to use. So just get out of that. So I'll just exit out of that connection. And what I've set up here is that you can see when I right click, I've got Commander here, but out of the box that doesn't actually happen, but with Git for Windows it does. So we need to set that up. So then you can do the same thing that I did before with Git for Windows, but you can do it with Commander. So let's have a look at how we do that. So just jumping back into the Commander homepage, and if we scroll down to where our download link is, just up above from there we've got the link to the GitHub repo. So if we go to the GitHub repo, I have some instruction on how to set that up. So just scroll down here, and if we go into integration, and what we need to do is we need to open a terminal as administrator, navigate to the directory that we've placed Commander in, and then we need to execute that command there. And then after we've done that, we'll have that Commander here set up. So I'll just go in and show you how to do that. Okay, so jumping back into the Windows Explorer, I'm just going to run commander.exe. So you need to go to where you've installed Commander. Just right click on it and run it as administrator. So the first thing you need to do is just to navigate to where you've actually got your Commander installation. So mine's at Program Files Commander, so I just need to go up a couple of levels. So I just navigate to that. Okay, so I'm now in that, and all I need to do is paste that command in that we got off the Git repository, and that's all we need to do. Now from now on, when I right click, I have the option there to do Commander here. So if I want to connect into an instance, I just go to navigate to where that, using Windows Explorer, navigate to where that key pair that I'm using for that instance is, and just do Commander here, and it'll get me straight in, run that shell command, and I'm straight into my instance. Now, jumping back into Windows Explorer, now we can navigate to where our key pairs for our instance are. Now I normally use OneDrive to store my key pairs simply because I'm using multiple devices and when I'm traveling and that sort of thing, so it just makes life a little bit easier for me, but you might have it in a different location, doesn't really matter. So we just navigate to where that is, and now we can right click on and use Commander here and jump straight into Commander and connect into our instance. Now I'll just very quickly grab that connect string that we need. So we've got here, just click on connect on that EC2 instance. We've got our SSH command that we need to use. Just going to copy that over and then we'll use that in our Commander screen. Okay, so back into the Commander screen, and we've navigated to where our key pair that we need to connect into our instance is. So now all we need to do is to put in the SSH command that we got from the management console, and let's see what happens when we enter that in. So boom, we've gone straight into our Amazon Linux EC2 instance, which is great. So we can do what we would do with putty, and we can do that just simply by using a couple of key clicks and going straight into our EC2 instance. So what I want to do now is actually exit out of this connection. So exit, and then get me back onto the desktop side. So not only can I connect in with SSH, I can also, to run commands on my EC2 instance, I can also look at connecting in using SFTP, and that will allow me to transfer files backwards and forwards to this EC2 instance. So the way we do that is we put our SSH command that we did before, and we just replace SSH with SFTP, and then click enter. And there we go, boom, we're straight in, but this time we've connected in using SFTP to our EC2 instance. Now, one thing to consider when we're using SFTP on the command line is that we need to be able to distinguish between commands that we're running on the EC2 instance and commands that we're going to be running on our local environment, because we're basically connected to both at the same time and we're running commands on both at the same time. So what we need to do is that any commands that we're going to be running on our local environment or our desktop environment, we need to have an L in front of those. So I'll just give you an example of that. So if we do an ls command, which is a standard command to list files within a directory. So on our EC2 instance, we haven't uploaded any files, so there's nothing there in the root folder for our EC2-user account. So if we do that, but with an L in front of it, so ls, it's going to give us a listing of files on our local environment, on our desktop. So you can see there, I'm in my key pairs /backspace directory, and that has my key pairs located in it, and it gives me a listing of those key pairs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to navigate up a couple of levels to my documents on my local. So I do LCD. So I'm not doing CD, I'm doing LCD. So I'm going to run a CD command, changing the directory, current directory in the local environment. I'm just going to go up 2 levels, so up one and then up another, which will get me into my documents. And now again, I'm going to do an LCD, and I'm going to go into a folder that I've created called test. And if I do an LLS in there, there will be a test file that I've put inside that. So this is a file that is located on my desktop, and I want to upload that file to my server. So the way I do that is I do put, and I just put the name of the file. Once I've done that, it will just upload that straight to my EC2 instance. So it's uploaded that file across. So if I do an ls, again, this is ls, not double ls. So this is a command that's going to be running on the EC2 instance. We can see there that that file has been uploaded. So that's about all you can do with SFTP using MinGW. There's not a lot that you can do other than that. So it's very limited to what you can do. You can do a lot more if you're running a native Linux environment. Then you can upload entire folders to that, but you cannot upload entire folders just using MinGW. It won't let you do recursive uploads. So what we'll do next is we'll have a look at the Ubuntu for Linux environment, which is the Linux subsystem for Windows 10, and that will be basically a Linux operating system running on top of our Windows environment. Now, the last solution that I'd like to show you is one that was brought to my attention by one of the Backspace students, Uga, and thank you very much, Uga, for bringing this to my attention. And what it is it's called the Linux subsystem for Windows 10, and it's currently pre-release, and it is a little bit buggy, and you need to sign up for the Windows 10 user experience. You need to put a version of Windows 10 that is pre-release. It won't, it's not going to be straight out of your Windows update. So there's quite a bit of mucking around you need to do to get this operating. I'm not going to be providing any support for this simply because it is quite cutting edge stuff, and it's in the future I probably will. So please don't ask me too many questions on the Q&A about it. But I'm just putting it here as really a glimpse into the future of how you might use Windows and Linux in a DevOps environment. So I've got up here the Ubuntu for Windows 10 running, and it's an application, and it's a real Linux environment, and it's running there on my Windows 10 desktop. So the first thing I want to do is navigate to where my key pairs are. Now I've got my key pair located on my F drive, so I just can't type in F and navigate to my G drive as I would in a Windows environment. So the way that we do it is that we need to CD, and we need to go to our mount folder, and it will be the drive. So it's on my G drive that I have my key pairs, and that will get me into my G drive. And then I just navigate to where my key pairs are, and so I've got them on my OneDrive and Documents Key Pairs Backspace there. And these are forward slashes, not backslashes, so if you find it's not working, it says can't find that directory or whatever, that's probably what it is. Just going to go into there. So once I'm now in there, I can I just have a look at what's inside there. So I can see there I've got my PEM file that I need to connect into my EC2 instance. And so now all I need to do is to put that command in and connect in. And there we go, boom, we're straight in as before, not a problem. So I'm just going to exit out of that connection, and I'm going to try and do the same thing, but I'm going to do it with SFTP and see what happens. And there we go, we're connected in. Now the difference is that we're connected in a real Linux environment. So again, if I want to have a look what's on my file system on the EC2 instance, I just do the command, and I can see there's that test.docx that I uploaded previously. So I'm just going to remove that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a complete. Okay, so just ls and that, nothing there. Okay, so now I've got an empty root directory on the instance side, and I'm going to now, instead of just copying a file over, I'm going to copy an entire directory over, which is something that I can't do in the MinGW environment. So I'm just going to LCD, so I just want to go up a couple of levels to where this is located. So now I've gone up 2 levels, so I'm now in my documents directory on my local system, on my desktop. And I'm just going to change into I'm not going to change into it. So I've actually got in there. So I've got in there, I've got a test directory there. So I'm going to copy that entire test directory over and see what happens. So command again we use is put, but this time we're doing it recursively. So I do put -r, and then we just put the name of that folder, and it will copy the entire folder over and the contents inside that. Okay, so it didn't do that, and the reason it didn't do that is because I need to first create a directory called test on the server side as well. So I'm just going to go into the server side. So mkdir, make a directory, and I'm going to call it test. And I'll just ls to make sure it's there. So now I've created a directory called test on the EC2 instance. So if I run that command again, so if I do put -r test, it'll grab everything in test, or grab the entire test folder, and it will copy it over to that directory called test. So let's have a look and see what happens. So if we do an ls on here, we will now have a test directory. And so if we cd into that test directory, and then we do another ls command, we can see that it not only copied the directory over, it has copied the file over as well. So I'm just going to go up again. And ls. Okay, so on the instance side, we've uploaded that test folder, which also contains a file. Now, normally we would just do an rm command to remove that folder, rm, and recursively remove that folder. And then we just put in test. And what it comes up with is invalid flag -r. So what that means is that although we can run commands using our SFTP environment, we can't run all commands, and we can't run all flags within a command. So it's very limited into what we can do. So although we can upload an entire folder, we can upload all of the contents of that folder, we can't delete it from the SFTP screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to exit out of there. So let's just run that command that we would normally do for connecting in with SSH. And then boom, we're straight into our instance. So let's just do an ls on that, and we can see we've got test. So if we want to remove test, we can do it quite easily in our SSH side of it. So rm-r, and then the name of the folder that we want to remove. And it's done. And so we just do an ls on that. We can see that it's all gone. So there you can see that it's a lot more powerful than what we can do with a native Linux environment as opposed to an emulated Linux environment. So if you're a command line guru and you love playing around with command line, this is probably the way you want to do it. If you're someone who just likes to use GUIs most of the time, then keep using FileZilla. I think FileZilla is pretty good, pretty quick and easy. So I think it's worth the mucking around with PuTTyGen and all that to get your PPK file done to do that. But certainly I've given you quite a few options there, so you don't have to use PuTTy. And if you want to quickly connect to an EC2 instance, then certainly using Commander or using Git for Windows and doing a Git bash here is a very useful way of doing it, very quick and easy. So that's all I need to say for now, and hopefully you've got something out of this, and I'll see you in the next lesson.